how zodiacs were formed. The 12 full moons is very tangible to be explained that yes, there are 12 units in a year. So the moon is easier to understand. If I'm going to talk about the sun, right, you will probably get confused because the sun never emerges or diminishes. It just gets eclipsed by the moon when the moon comes between the earth and the sun. So here, just to make it simpler for you, that the 12 zodiac signs coordinate with the 12 full moons. These are the periods. We start with the springtime. The springtime comes between March 21st to April 20th. This is the first thing when we say start of the year, which starts with the zodiac sign Aries. And if you've observed the cluster of stars in the sky, you would say they have these various shapes and forms which, according to everyone's imagination, comes to the animal. Sometimes you feel that it is looking like a ram or the goat or the scorpion or this. So during the time of March 21st to April 20th is the rise of the spring, and Aries, that is the start of the zodiac sign. So Aries is signified, the astrological symbol given to Aries is ram. People born under this sign, now you should associate those people that they have these attributions to them. They feel they are alive. They are the start of the year. They are completely energetic. They are sharpening their tools, their magnetism to go ahead and explore the world. If you see, the Arians are also that type. They're energetic. They completely want to explore the world. So here, when they tune into their higher energies and work on an impulse, they'll always be hitting the right target. The Taurus, the symbol is the head of the bull. From April 21st to May 21st. Now when sun, see after 29 days, now the sun enters the sign of Taurus. People started harnessing their oxen. Slowly and methodically, they plowed the earth into beautiful and practical rows and planted the seeds. How well they had planned and saved their resources from the past year determined their productions of that year. So they prayed for fertility, as the warmer weather allowed them to enjoy the sensuous sights, sounds and smell of reawakening earth. So you see, if you see Taurian people, they're very sensuous. The Taurian people are always attracted towards relationships. For them, honey before the money, and they're always told money before the honey. Taurus is productive, strong, dependable, patient, slow, practical and generous. When treated well, they can give the world to you. And they're stubbornly furious when pushed too far. The astrological symbol of the Geminis is the twins and the duality. And the dates are from May 22nd to June 21st. When this month finally arrived, the necessity to concentrate solely on the compelling duties of planting had somewhat subsided. People were now able to catch up on the many other areas of their lives that had been put aside. Not only other areas of farm life, but quick short trips to visit with the neighbors, mix around with the relatives, mixing around with the friends. It was more possible because the work had been done. The joy of seeing familiar faces after a long winter overrode any petty disagreements of the past. It was a time for superficial conversation, exchanging family news and local gossip, as well as discussing techniques for farming, hunting, cooking, and living in general. So you understand how communication became a strong point for the Geminis. So people born under those particular sign, They're very communicative and they communicate very well. Their social skills are very good. At times when we are mixing around with our neighbors, with our relatives or with our friends, we necessarily not speak what we want to speak. So we become dual by nature, right? We do not think and speak, we just speak what is appropriate. And Geminis know about this. So this came very naturally to the Geminis, that communication. How do I communicate and connect with people? Because that was the main theme during those months. The astrological symbol for Cancer is a crab. And the dates that fits this constellation is June 22nd to July 23rd. Now the ancient astrologers chose a crab or sometimes a turtle to symbolize the time of the sun's passage through the sign. Now see, we are coordinating all this with the full moons as well as the suns, how the sun also shines more on a Cancerian between June 22nd to July 23rd. Now, this is to symbolize the time of the sun's passage through the sign. Cancer, as their shells can be seen as a house, right? At that time of the year, the home and consequently the mother became the center of attention. There were home repairs and improvements to be made, usually at a mother's direction, because the mother is staying more at home, so she knows what things have to be taken place or what needs repairs or what needs building up at home. The early harvest was prepared for both eating and storage in the real center of every home, that is the kitchen. And there was that most precious gift, the mothering needed to nurture and protect the lives and feelings of a family living through the long eventful summer. Can you relate it? The Aries are people who are alive. Taurus plant the seeds. Gemini, after planting the seeds, gets into communication. You need to be in touch with the other people of the same, your friends, your acquaintances, and you need to do your networking. Then comes the Cancerians, who are very home-born. This close attachment to home and family gives rise to Cancer's association with the past. I mean, after all, we earn not only for ourselves, but also to give the best to our family. Leo the lion. The symbol of the lion is a threshing scythe. This is from July 24th to August 23rd. The heat of the sun during the time of the Leo is so intense that we are all inclined to act like the king of the jungle and just want to play, eat, catnap the whole day in royal splendor. You see these lions and these tigers, how they just like to eat, and after having had their prey and done their jobs and given their young ones to eat, they just like to sprawl in royal splendor. The threshing scythe symbol for the Leo is a reminder that it took the noble heart, commanding presence, and organizational skill of a king to motivate the population to stop having fun in the sun and to prepare for the harvest. It also requires great acting skill to convince everyone that to stop having fun and work is what you really want to, when it's only what you want others to be doing. So if you see, the Leo will always be a great advocate. Virgo the Virgin. Astro symbol for the Virgin is a woman with a sheaf of wheat. Now, this sign is from August 24th to September 23rd. By the time Virgo ruled around, even the most fun-loving person could deny that the crops were ready for harvest. The work that had to be done was analyzed in detail, and realization of the work not done was also analyzed in detail. Now, the work that was not done during the time of Leo, this fueled worries about the time, needed to get all jobs done perfectly. Close attention was paid to the logical and most efficient techniques necessary to produce maximum results. Both weeding by hand and natural insect repellents were necessary to ensure the health of the mature plants and thereby the people and their livestock. Now, see, if you actually look at the Virgos, people who are born, it's very instinctual in them that they need to nurture, we call them very critical, but actually they're perfectionists. They go into details of what has been done, what has not been done. The astro symbol of the Libra is balancing, the scales. Now this is from September 24th to October 23rd. The scales of the Libra, one of the few signs of the zodiac that is neither human nor animal. But it reminds us that the time of Libra was when harvest was weighed and measured against other years and other farmers. The declaration of contractual partnerships were made and fulfilled as goods were exchanged for their fair market value. But the perfect balance of the Libran scales was a reminder that the first 6 warming full moons of the lunar year had passed and that the challenges of the next cooling full moons were at hand. So see, you are weighing, you're balancing. That first 6 months have passed like that. Next 6 months, what are we to prepare? So our ancestors also knew that a balanced, loving relationship was valuable on these cooling nights. The astrological symbol for a scorpion is a scorpion. It's between October 24th to November 23rd. Now, the sun's entrance into the sign of Scorpio was a matter of life and death. The sun's heat was dying, as were the crops, the flowers, and the leaves of the trees. The least prized of the livestock were killed and the meat preserved for the coming winter. All this death must have reminded our ancestors of their morality. But they realized that the leaves and the perennial crops and flowers would be back in the spring, and the annual crops and flowers would live on through their seeds. So when these flowers were dying, they started collecting the seeds. The animals that were killed would live on in their offspring and through the people who ate their flesh to survive. So the reality of a kind of life after death in their everyday world suggested the possibility of a life after death in the spiritual world for our ancestors. The astrological symbol for a Sagittarian is an arrow. Now this is calculated between November 23rd to December 21st. The arrow of a Sagittarius represents Chiron, the bow-wielding centaur, half man and half horse, the first doctor of herbal medicine, the sage and tutor of Achilles. The legend of Chiron may have started out with stories of a wise and skillful hunter, perhaps the leader of the first tribe to hunt from the back of a horse. As the hunting parties of different tribes crossed paths, they could have exchanged stories of Chiron's deeds as they sat under the night sky, discussing the faraway lands and the different religions, philosophies, and customs they had seen in their long journeys made possible by travel on a horseback. Capricorn is symbolized by the goat, a mountain goat with the tail of a fish. They are born between December 22nd to January 20th. Now, the day the sun entered the sign of Capricorn, it marked the time of the winter solstice, the shortest, bleakest day of the year. But the next day, The sun began its northward climb, and with each succeeding midday sky, it moved towards the rebirth of spring. Capricorn represents the crystallization of a dream. Now that is demonstrated by the fish tail into a real, tangible thing by application of hard work. That is the climbing goat. Built on structure, that is the mountain. Our ancestors knew that they could get through the deprivations of a hard winter only by being disciplined and conservative. Aquarius, the water bearer. The astro symbol, that is the astrological symbol, is water whipped into waves by the wind. It's between January 21st to February 19th. By the time the sun entered the sign of Aquarius, our ancestors were beginning to feel confined. Those they weren't snowed in would only bother to visit their closest friends or other neighbors with whom they had agreed to band together to help each other survive the winter. Now, with their friends, they could escape the monotony of the winter days by sharing their wildest hope and wishes for the future. Inspired by the acceptance of their friends, it was possible to foresee a whole world of friends, each pouring out nourishing ideas and inventions for the good of all. These ideas could have been thought crazy by those who didn't allow themselves to creatively dream about the future. And so for those with Aquarian tendencies, they had to learn to detach themselves from the comments by the less understanding members of the community they desired to serve. This made them rebels, some of them rebels, who are desiring freedom at all costs. Pisces, the fish. The astrological symbol, two fishes swimming in opposite directions. It's actually one swimming upstream and the other downstream. This is symbolized from February 20th to March 20th. Now the symbol for Pisces reminds us of the point where one year was dying while another was being born. The ideals of Aquarius were tempered by the sad realities of Pisces. It was an emotional time, a time to discover how dependable your friends were when you needed them. It was the end of winter and supplies were at their lowest point. The strong and the compassionate were required to do without so that the children, the elderly and the less fortunate could survive. Sometimes people even gave their lives so that others would live. The reason for the survival of our race from ancient time until now can be contributed, or maybe our capacity for self-denial, sometimes even martyrdom. The fish of Pisces swim in the ocean, and you're connected to all the land that the oceans of the world touch. See, we have refined, along with the coming of years, we have refined our astrology, but this is actually the truth of how our ancestors read the stars and made their assessments. Now, have you understood how our ancestors divided these 12 full moons into 12 different groups? So as the moon was on the rise and as the moon was on the decline, and we came into different seasons, and people born under the different seasons actually adopt that kind of attitudes towards themselves. Now the sun, it travels through all these 12 zodiac signs and it comes back to spring. So the return of the sun to the portion of the zodiac occupied by the constellation Aries marked the return of the spring, and so the cycle began again from the Aries, then the Taurus, then the Gemini, then the Cancer, then the Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, and back to Aries. It's like a clockwork precision. Alright, now this is applicable throughout the world. These seasons, this sowing of the seeds, nurturing of the seeds. And then the person, when he's done with his sowing of the seeds, he has time for his personal self. And then how he has to balance and analyze of what the first 6 months did and the last 6 months do. So, until the outbreak of this age of scientific realism, some 300 years ago, astrology and astronomy were so closely relatable as they were indistinguishable. I mean, astrology was astronomy, astronomy was astrology. That's how close they went side by side. And this is how some believe that Sir Isaac Newton, he discovered the principles of calculus and his laws of motion during his quest to produce more accurate horoscopes, though it is rare that a scientist is going to ever admit it. And Isaac Newton was very fond of astrology because it was closely connected to astronomy, and it was in this quest that he realized that, oh, there's a law of motion. When somebody asks me that, are you fond of astrology, or are you an astrologer, do you believe in astrology? My answer though is simple, yes. But yet I like this answer the best. They say, so if anyone asks you as to why you are interested in astrology, you can quote the words of one of the great scientists. And do you know what Sir Isaac Newton said? I have studied these things.